All right, so thank you for tuning in to Chomping at the Bit. I'm Kyle Evers, of course. And on this episode, we're going to talk about Week 18 in the NFL. We'll kind of go over, what happened. Well, at least the important things that happened. And then we will take a look at the final standings and the playoff picture. Won't go into the playoff matchups yet. We'll do that later in the week when I do playoff preview, at least the wild card round preview. But we'll talk about the aftermath of this season with the Black Monday. And I believe we even had a coach get fired on Tuesday. So we'll look at the openings, see maybe what jobs are surprising to me that they're open, which ones I kind of figure were going to happen. And I guess I'll give maybe my top three of the available jobs that I think are the best in the best situation. Then finally, end the episode. Have to talk about Antonio Brown. I haven't done that yet, but I'll do that at the end of this episode. Let you know what I think about what's going on. And then guess I'll get you set up for the rest of this week and what episode you should expect. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about Week 18. So it's the first Week 18 the NFL, has had. I gotta say, for all the concerns of the extra game and all that kind of stuff, I thought it was wildly successful. We had a lot of playoff scenarios that were still up in the air. We had basically a win and in situation for Sunday night, which was great. We had some intrigue in terms of teams winning and then waiting to see what other teams would do to see where they would be going. We had an upset, which I'll get into here in a little bit, that I think shocked everybody. So all in all, I think it was a very successful Week 18. And, it was aided by the fact that all the games were divisional games. That always adds to the level of competition. But, there were some great games. There were some that weren't so great to watch. But, like I said, it was a good weekend. But let's start off with, I guess, the shocking upset of the weekend. The Colts-Jaguars game. Because when I was looking at the playoff scenarios, I kind of penciled in the Colts because, it was a situation where they just needed to win, really, and they were going to be in. They were playing the lowly Jaguars, who were coming off a 50-10, rout from the Patriots. So you kind of figured last game, Jaguars probably wouldn't be playing for much, and the Colts probably would get to, cakewalk into the playoffs. Well, that did not happen at all. The Jaguars, I believe, played their best game of the season. It's something, I guess, once the new coaching staff gets in there, maybe they can build a little bit on going into next year. Will be intriguing to see what the Jaguars do look like next year in terms of draft picks they bring in. They're getting Travis Etienne back, as he was the second first-round pick they had, the running back out of Clemson. So, Jaguars, I guess, should be a better team next year. But we're talking about this year, and they've been abysmal all year. Trevor Lawrence had his issues, throwing a lot of picks, and so you figured the Colts were going to, run all over them. But what we did notice in the game was, and this is kind of something I've been wanting to see all year, where Jonathan Taylor gets neutralized, and the Colts are now having to rely on Carson Wentz to make plays for them in order to win a game. Can he do it? We know that he did it back in Philadelphia when he was having his MVP type year before he got hurt. But since then, I don't really think we've seen that Carson Wentz. Now, some media people were thinking with him going to Indy, with Frank Reich and those guys there, that'd be one of those situations where if you change the scenery for Carson Wentz, then maybe you can get back to the good Carson Wentz. So this was his opportunity, and it was awful. So the Jaguars, beat them 26-11. And let me see what Wentz did real quick. So Wentz, 17-29, 185, touchdown, interception. But on a day where he also lost a fumble. But on a day where Jonathan Taylor only gave him 77 yards, when we know that the formula for the Colts has been, Jonathan Taylor running for like 120, 130, and kind of limiting the responsibility for Wentz. It didn't go that way this day. There's a little bit more put on Wentz, and you saw what happened. It was the Colts only had 3 points going into the fourth quarter, and they got a meaningless touchdown 2-point conversion to get to 11. So it's going to raise questions about Carson Wentz. You'll probably hear over the offseason, not necessarily rumblings of trades or anything like that, but there's going to be a lot of wonder because now they're going to have to sit here, live with this loss, while watching the playoffs, going to the draft, the offseason, all that. And like I said, it was a surprising loss because I figured that they were going to be a shoo-in for the postseason. But then, once the Colts lost, it opened up scenarios for other teams. And one of the teams that, found new life because of that was Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh needed some help to get in. So, with, like I said, Tennessee losing, it opened up, I think, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and the possibility of the Raiders and Chiefs, Raiders and Chargers both getting in. So it made the Pittsburgh-Baltimore game, I guess, a little bit more interesting, although that game wasn't exciting to watch. It was two teams that really struggled offensively. I know everybody was really high on Big Ben last week, but this week we saw more of I will say he was probably a little bit better, but he wasn't as good as that Cleveland game. This game he threw for 44 times, which that's not a winning formula for the Steelers normally. Now it did help that for the Ravens they had Huntley at quarterback. And I think this is probably the first time I really got to see Huntley play for an extended period because I hadn't really watched a lot of Ravens games, especially once, I guess, Lamar got injured. Didn't really watch a lot of Ravens games on TV. And I think you could basically say this Ravens season, it's been the tale of two quarterbacks in Jackson and Huntley that just couldn't make enough plays with their arm to ultimately get them to the playoffs. If you remember, they started off the year 8-3 and then went on to lose their last 6 games. So they lost to the Steelers 16-13 overtime. Baltimore now has to figure out, well, I know Baltimore's going to go into next year thinking that all they need is a healthy Lamar and they'll be fine. And I still say that they do need to push Lamar to develop his passing game. Because we'll have to see once he comes back from, was it ankle injury or something? Does that take away from any of his athleticism or his speed, anything like that? Because the way that Lamar Jackson is built, if his speed, acceleration, agility, all that get compromised, then you're looking at a guy who's maybe an average quarterback at best. So hopefully, while he still has the ability to, make plays with his legs, that he continues to develop his accuracy and all that. And if he can get to a place where you have to fear him in the passing game as well as his ability to scramble and make plays, then and only then do I think the Ravens will be a legitimate Super Bowl contender. But until then, I just don't see it. Even with this year, if Lamar had played all 17 games, sure, they may have made the playoffs, but I wouldn't have them, as any more of a Super Bowl favorite than they are right now, not being in the playoffs, to be honest with you. So for the Steelers, they get the win, and now they're sitting around waiting to see, because getting the win, having the Colts lose, now the only thing they're really waiting for is Raiders, Chargers, not to end in a tie. So if there's a winner in that matchup, the Steelers now get in. And I will say, coming into this final weekend, I did not think it would line up in any way for the Steelers to really have a chance. Because like I said, I was expecting the Colts to win. But I mean, that just opened up the floodgates for anything to happen. So then I guess, let me see what else was there in the AFC that's noteworthy. I mean, the Titans took care of business against the Texans, although the Texans did play hard. And the Titans, secured the number 1 seed, which is what they were playing for this weekend. Like I said, a little bit, we'll take a look at the final standings and the playoff bracket. But let's see what to do. So yeah, I guess we'll just go into the Sunday night game, which was Chargers Raiders. I think easily was the best game of the weekend. So now we're going into that game, and the current picture was current wild cards with New England. I think the Chargers and Pittsburgh at that point. Yes. So for the Chargers and the Raiders, if they win, either one wins, they get in as the 6th seed. No, if the Chargers won, they would be the 6th seed, because at that point they would lose the tiebreaker to the Patriots. But if the Raiders would win, the Raiders would jump from out of the playoffs all the way up to the number 5 seed. So, like I said, great game. It was a little bit slow in the beginning, but it really picked up. And as the game got later on into the third quarter, heading into the fourth quarter, I think Collinsworth started talking about the real possibility that the two teams were going to tie. And 4 quarters wasn't enough for the game. Went into overtime. And then in overtime, both teams got possession of the ball, didn't do anything. And then coming out to the very last possession, where the Raiders had the ball, we were well under a minute at this point. There was kind of a scramble on the field. Raiders getting into position. Chargers trying to get their defense to line up. And Brandon Staley called a timeout. And it was a rough game for Brandon Staley because he had the failed 4th down conversion early in the game, like on their own 18. And I know Brandon Staley is one who likes to go for it on 4th down, but I do think that he was a little bit reckless with that decision making at parts in the season. And there's a good chance that you could pinpoint some of those decisions that, cost the Chargers a few games throughout the year, which now looking back on it, had them in this situation where they needed to win to get in. So I understand, like I said, Brandon Staley coaches aggressively like that. I understand it. Be true to who you are. And I guess you could give him credit for the final game of the season for him not to change his philosophy. But especially with that one on their own 18, like to see better judgment, punt the ball away and play like that. But anyway, the Colts timeout. People are wondering what's going on because I believe it was like 20 seconds on the clock, maybe even less, like 15. And to be honest, the way the Raiders were approaching their offensive sequence, it did look like the Raiders are going to play for the tie. I think, they were around midfield, so it seemed like they were going to play where they're going to wait, bleed the clock, and then maybe go for like a Hail Mary just to kind of see what happens. Basically, they weren't going to let the Chargers get a chance at winning the game. And for them, like I said, they were going to make sure that either it was a tie or they were going to win it the very last second. So when the Chargers did call the timeout, I was watching the game. I thought it was really weird that he called the timeout. I think later on heard that supposedly Staley called the timeout because the defense wasn't set. I think Renfro was kind of left uncovered. So Staley called the timeout to get the defense set. Fine. Yes, that was a big moment in the game, but I do think the following play is where the game was lost for the Chargers. Because the defense is now out there. They've talked it through in the huddle for the timeout. Raiders come out in shotgun, but they've done it the play before and just kind of did a little handoff like a draw, inside zone type run. And they did the same thing on this play. So all the Chargers basically had to do was, plug the running lane, make the tackle, don't give a first down or anything like that. And then at that point, probably going to get a tie out of it. Well, the defense didn't really pursue the ball. It might have been, I think it was Josh Jacobs who ran it, but he found a hole on the left side, gained like 8-9 yards, got the first down. And then at that point, the Raiders realized that they were in field goal range at that point. So, bleed the clock down, kicker on the field, kicks it, they make the field goal, win it, they get in. And if you look at the Raiders season, really interesting. Started off well. Then we start hearing about some of this John Gruden stuff. Ultimately, John Gruden's gone. They bring in the interim coach. Struggle a little bit in the middle of the season. Looked like they weren't going to make the playoffs. Then, late in the year, they go on a little run. Certain teams in front of them lose, a couple of games here and there. They get back into the picture and ultimately in the playoffs as a top wild card, by the end of Sunday because of their win over the Chargers. And, I guess it was a great way to cap off a really weird season for them. For the Chargers, gotta be some head scratching because there's a lot of talent on that team. You have Justin Herbert, great young quarterback, one of the more talented quarterbacks in the AFC at least, if not in all of NFL. You have a capable running game. You have stud wide receivers in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. You have good tight ends. Good tight end Jared Cook. Defense, you got Derwin James, guys like that. Defense is formidable. And somehow, I guess for the second year in a row, they don't make the postseason. Now, I'm not going to completely, close the book on the Chargers because I still think that their future is bright. But I do think that this was a missed opportunity for them. We'll see what kind of decisions come out of the organization. I don't expect Brandon Staley to get fired or anything like that, of course. But do we see a coaching shakeup maybe? I don't know. They'll be an interesting team to watch going into next year. So that kind of takes care of all of the craziness happening on the AFC side. NFC, the only thing that was really up in the air was, some seeding, of course, but the two games that everybody was looking at, Saints, Falcons, and Niners, Rams. That was the only playoff spot that was open. So it was one of those where if the Niners won, they got in. Niners lose, Saints win, then the Saints are in. Obviously, both teams lose, then the Niners are in. So, looking at both matchups, the Saints had the easier matchup, of course. They have a Falcons team that was just eliminated from the playoffs last week. We all know their struggle that they had this season. The 49ers have a Rams team that, yes, they're in the playoff, but they had seeding to play for. The Rams, I believe, going into this, had an outside shot at the 1 seed, I think. No, Green Bay wrapped at the 1 seed last week, but I think the Rams could be the 2 seed, depending on what happens with the Bucs and all that. So, the Rams go into the matchup. They're motivated, looking to win. The Niners are incredibly motivated because they need to win. Game's going on. This is another game that came down to the fourth quarter. Very late to the fourth quarter because the Niners found themselves down 24-17, late in the fourth, driving down the field. Within the final 30 seconds, they get into the red zone. They were able, Garoppolo was able to lead them into the end zone, tie the game. This game goes into overtime. And in overtime, I think first couple possessions, nothing really happening. I believe it was the second Rams possession. Stafford tried to go downfield, down the right side. Gets picked off. Gives 49ers decent field position. And the Niners were able to go down the field, line up for a field goal, get the field goal, get the win, clinch the playoff spot. The Saints did all they could. They got a 30-20 win over the Falcons. But they didn't get in. And to be honest, I wanted to see the 49ers in over the Saints because I don't like the Saints quarterback situation. So I think if they had gotten in, it would have made that wild card matchup for whoever was going to be that much easier. I think now with the 49ers in, makes that game, that wild card game, that much better. We'll have to see what Garoppolo feels like. I know he's dealing with the hand injury. But he played in the Rams game and he played well enough. So I'm fully expecting him to be the starter. The Niners defense really coming along. And then offensively, we know that the Niners can do some things. So not saying the Niners are a dangerous playoff team, but I do think that they're a team that can surprise, somebody wild card weekend. So you take all that into account. Some other games happen. Blah, blah, blah. Week 18's done. So now we skip ahead to the playoff bracket. And so ultimately, we'll start with the AFC. Tennessee ends up as the 1 seed, 12-5. Chiefs, also 12-5. But they lose the tiebreaker to Tennessee because Tennessee beat Kansas City earlier in the year. Buffalo wins the AFC for the second year in a row at 11-6. They're your 3 seed. The Bengals, gotta say real quickly, side note here. Congratulations to the Bengals winning the AFC North. They went 10-7. I think I said on here before, coming into the year, Bengals are seen as the worst team in that division. Well, they went worst to first. And now we'll see what they look like with their first taste of postseason. Also, what this will do for next year. year after the near future here. What does this do for the Bengals franchise? Now do they kind of operate as a, like, does the mentality of the organization change to the fact of them expecting to be in the playoffs year after year now? We'll see. Or is it going to be a one-year wonder type thing and they go back towards the bottom of the division? I don't expect that, but we'll see. So I just want to say that real quick. Like I said, Raiders are now the 5 seed at 10-7. Patriots 6 seed 10-7. Steelers, your last team in, 9-7-1. So your playoff matchups are going to be Tennessee gets the bye. You'll have Pittsburgh going to Kansas City in the 2-7 matchup. Patriots go to the Bills, 3-6 matchup. Raiders go to Cincinnati in the 4-5 matchup. Like I said, later in the week, we'll do like a legit preview of the matchups and all that. For right now, that's your playoff picture in the AFC. NFC, Green Bay gets the bye, 13-4. And they clinched that because of the head-to-head win over Tampa Bay earlier in the year. Tampa Bay is now your 2 seed, 13-4. Cowboys win the NFC East. Of course they do. They're 12-5, your 3 seed. Rams, 12-5, the 4 seed. And that's another thing where the Cowboys beat the Rams early in the year, so they own the tiebreaker. So your wild card teams, you got the Cardinals 11-6. Interesting to see what the Cardinals, after spending so many weeks as the number 1 seed, to now fall back to the 5, and we'll see what that will do psyche-wise for the team. But they're a team that, if it's clicking, could be a dangerous wild card team, and they would definitely be a team that I could see, doing the Tampa Bay thing, making a run of the Super Bowl as a wild card. They have the talent, but they're the 5 seed. Niners, 6 seed, 10-7, and the Eagles get in at 9-8, and they beat the Saints on the tiebreaker head-to-head early in the season. So I guess the Eagles are probably the biggest surprise there, but that's your bracket. So that means Green Bay with the bye. The Eagles will travel to Tampa Bay in the 2-7 matchup. Niners go to the Cowboys in the 3-6 matchup. I mean, that's like vintage 90s NFC playoffs there. Niners, Cowboys. So it's going to be great to see that kind of playoff rivalry continue. And then the 4-5 matchup got the Cardinals going to LA to face the Rams. So that's the good news of Week 18. Now, the not so good news is the fact that the first Monday following the season is always seen as Black Monday because coaches end up getting fired. So let me see here. Let me make sure I get all of the coaching vacancies correct here. So let's see. So, the jobs that are now open. Well, we know the Raiders' job's open because John Gruden was gone middle of the season. The Jacksonville job's open because of the Urban Meyer thing. Joe Judge was fired Tuesday by the Giants. So far, well, I guess the Gruden one, if you're going before the year, probably is the biggest surprise so far. But based on what happened during the year, you knew it was going to happen. So right now, 3 jobs, you kind of expected those. The Bears fired Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace. That was kind of expected because of his job was on the line coming into the year. They didn't have a good year. He did kind of catch some heat for his handling of Justin Fields, so made sense. The Vikings got rid of Mike Zimmer and their GM as well. Wasn't fully surprised by that one because they're paying Kirk Cousins good money. Haven't really gotten the results, so naturally Zimmer's gone. So 5 jobs so far. Okay. The Dolphins. This one I will say did surprise me. They got rid of Brian Flores. And the weird thing is, it's because the last 2 years, Flores led the Dolphins to winning records. So for a franchise in the Dolphins that before Flores was not exactly that successful, to turn around and fire a guy after 2 winning seasons, gotta say is really shocking to me. But I don't expect Flores to be out of a job long. I mean, if he was able to win down in Miami, you'd have to think he's going to get one of these other jobs. So I expect to hear his name for a hire soon. So that's 6 jobs. And then the 7th job, the Broncos fired Vic Fangio. Wasn't surprised at all. There was questions about his job coming into the year. So looking at those 7 jobs, like I said, the Miami one's the only one that really surprised me. So thinking really quickly, of the 7 jobs, I would say the top 3 jobs would be, I'd probably go Raiders 1. I mean, they're a playoff team, so the next coach who goes in there, you definitely have something to build off of. The number 1 job for the next coach would be to, maintain. Well, I guess they have to make a decision on Derek Carr. Seems like every year there's talk about whether they, extend him, trade him, blah, blah, blah. Well, you hear more of that talk again this offseason. I think getting to the playoffs, because I said this like in the middle of the season, that'd be the biggest thing for him, because he's a talented quarterback. It's just that it hasn't turned into playoff appearances. Well, now he's got him in the playoffs, going against a Cincinnati team. If they're able to get a win, that will look much better for him as well. So I expect Carr to be there next year. But contract-wise, I'm not really sure. So there's probably going to need to be some negotiations going on the offseason. But like I said, I think that's a great job. Carr's there. You got a good quarterback. Jacobs is a good running back if you keep him healthy. You got Waller at the tight end, who's good. You got Renfro in the wide receiving group, good. So I actually think the Raiders could go with an offensive-minded or defensive-minded coach. I do think defensively they could, improve a little bit there. But they could go with an offensive mind to try to unlock the true potential of the offensive group. Second job, I would say, is probably the... So I think with 2 and 3, I'd probably go Vikings, Dolphins. But I don't know if I should go Dolphins, Vikings. But those are the next 2 that I think are good jobs, because, the Dolphins, you're getting a team that was above 500. You'll have questions at quarterback. Is Tua the guy or not? And, outside of that, pretty good defense. Running game is going to be a big question mark. What do you do to improve that? But the toughest thing about the Dolphins job is going to be, are you able to get ahead in the AFC East, where we know what Buffalo is right now? New England, it's a rookie quarterback, but He had a pretty good rookie year. So we'll have to see how he looks year 2. And if he does improve, make that sophomore jump, then you expect the Patriots to be a little bit better next year. So is there a way for, the new coach in Miami to get in the middle of that? Or is it going to be something like this year where, the 3 seed hoping to win enough games to get in on the back end of the wild card? But other than that, I think it is a good job. I really do. And then the Vikings. It's close to Team Vikings. And I think the Broncos are probably just on the outside of the top 3. But I'm going Vikings because, yes, Kirk Cousins is frustrating at quarterback, but he's a good quarterback. He's not great. He's not a superstar or anything like that. But he's a good, serviceable quarterback. You have Dalvin Cook. You have Adam Thielen. Defensively, you have a good foundation to build with. It's just production on the field in primetime games, which has always been an issue. And lessening the kind of lulls in the play where sometimes the Vikings seem to play down to inferior opponents and lose a game or 2 in the year that they shouldn't. Gotta fix that. And then that's a situation where I think could be a quick turnaround and the Vikings could be a playoff team next year. So I think those are the 3 job openings that I think are the best. Now the worst job out of the 7, that's another story. Might be the Giants' job. Because quarterback, we don't know. It seems like Daniel Jones isn't the answer. Your backup's Mike Glennon, he's not the answer. You have Saquon Barkley, but he's coming back from injury. And don't really know if he can last the full season yet. You have wide receivers, which is good. But with no quarterback to throw to them, how effective are they? And the wide receiver group dealt with a lot of injuries this year. So now you have injury concerns there. Defensively, they're not terrible. And I think it's just a product of the offense not being great. Not being good. That I think put so much pressure on the defense that I think they faded towards the end of the year. But only because the quarterback situation is such a big question mark, I put the Giants as the worst opening. It's a quarterback league. They don't have one. That's why. So that's my 2 cents on, I guess, the Black Monday aftermath and the coaching jobs that are available. So now, let's wrap this up. Talk about Antonio Brown real quick, and then we'll, like I said, wrap up the episode. So Antonio Brown. I've been waiting to talk about this because it's an interesting situation. So, you all saw it just a couple weeks ago. He had his outburst on the sideline, ripped off his jersey and all that, threw his gloves into the crowd, blah, 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 skipped to the tunnel, jogged down the tunnel, never to be seen again in a Bucs uniform, apparently. We'll see. But a lot of questions came out of it. We had Antonio Brown's side about how he wasn't healthy to play. And we heard from Bruce Arians and some other league people that the issue is with, targets and incentives, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, money for Antonio Brown. So now it's created kind of a division of, do you trust Antonio Brown's word that he wasn't healthy, or do you go with Bruce Arians or the team or NFL people who are saying that it was more of incentives and targets base. And I got to say, Antonio Brown does not get the benefit of the doubt with me. I've seen too many times where he's messed up situations and then found his way out. I believe the Pittsburgh thing, it was he wasn't happy with targets with Big Ben. But he thought Big Ben was throwing to, I think it was Smith-Schuster at that time, too much and not to him. So he started missing meetings, and then it was a Facebook Live video in the locker room while Tomlin was addressing the team. And that ultimately led to him being sent away. Goes to Oakland, doesn't even play a game for Oakland. He becomes a headache out there. Gets to New England. People thought this was the spot where he would calm down. He has the off-field thing with, threatening the witnesses or whatever. Robert Kraft says he's got to go. He's gone from there. Even though Tom Brady wanted him, Robert Kraft says we can't deal with this. Tom Brady gets to Tampa Bay. Tells Tampa Bay, I want Antonio Brown here. Antonio Brown goes there last year. They kept the Super Bowl title. Everything's looking great coming into this year. Yeah. Why wouldn't it be fun down there again? He gets hurt, misses some weeks, comes back, blah, blah, blah. Leads to the Jets game. So, he had incentives, like I said, he needed to hit. I believe he needed, 5 more catches, like 60 yards. I think a touchdown to hit some incentive. And the report is he didn't like the fact that Brady was starting to target Rob Gronkowski more. After it looked like Gronk was in the doghouse a couple of games prior to that. It was like a missed touchdown pass or something, blah, blah, blah. So, like Antonio Brown approached Tom Brady about it, which I thought was ridiculous because Brady's been vouching for Antonio Brown, since New England, and like I said, in Tampa Bay. So clearly Brady wanted Antonio Brown there. Well, fast forward, Antonio Brown claims that, Brady was only being his friend in quotes because he's a good player. Then like Alex Guerrero's tied in for some bill, treatment or gym session or something like that Antonio Brown didn't think he had to pay because he thought it was like a courtesy thing because these boys with Brady, whatever. And now I think the further we get from the situation, the more it looks like it was a money incentive issue to it all. Because then, I believe it was the other day, we learned that Antonio Brown and his agent approached Tampa Bay for the sole purpose of trying to get the incentive money guaranteed. So, why try to do that, with a few weeks left in the season, if then a couple weeks later you're going to talk about how you're too hurt to play. Then the overarching story to this is, if it was an incentive issue, there was a whole other game left in the season to play. And we saw this past weekend where Brady was supposed to be pulled from the game, but told Bruce Arians no, went back out under center just to throw a pass to Rob Gronkowski to get him his incentive money. So who's to say he wouldn't have done that for Antonio Brown? But for some reason, something clicked in Antonio Brown's head, and he did what he did. So the funniest part of it all is there was a report I saw sometime this week where Antonio Brown needed ankle surgery because of bone fragments or something in his ankle. Which I guess if that were the case, then yeah, I could see you being too hurt to play. It doesn't help that, Antonio Brown, like I said, skipped through the back of the end zone to the tunnel, and then like jogged or ran down the tunnel. Like to think if you had bone fragments in your ankle, you wouldn't do that. But yeah, anyway. There has been no word of him getting this ankle surgery. Yet, since the incident, we've seen him at a Brooklyn Nets game. We've seen him do a couple of interviews. I guess he's in a studio recording some music or whatever. I don't know. When it first happened, like I said, I didn't buy in the whole too injured to play. And the further we get from it, I really don't buy into it. So, whether or not this is the final chapter of Antonio Brown's career, I don't know. I have a feeling it should be, but I have the sneaking suspicion that some team is going to give him yet another chance next year. But I just think it's going to be another one of those situations where a really talented guy ultimately sabotage their own career because of personality, attitude, off the field stuff, whatever. But Antonio's days in Pittsburgh, he's one of the most uncoverable wide receivers in the league. Even one game he played in New England, he scored a touchdown. So he showed he still had it. Tampa Bay, he was Brady's go-to receiver the first year. And I guess not so much the second year, I guess. But he's still a very talented guy. It's just to the point now where if you're going to bring him in to your organization, is it going to ultimately be worth it? And if you do, it's probably something where kind of at this point you can really only go by year-to-year basis. No team is going to sign him to a multi-year deal because you have no idea how he's going to feel year 2 or any year after that. Will he just, up and one out? Will he? I don't know, because we don't really know what to expect from Antonio Brown when he's not the number one option and seeing most of the targets. He gets unpredictable at that point. So, it's unfortunate. Like I said, he is a really talented guy. It's just that he gets in his own way at times. I know there's talk about mental health and all that. If that is the case, then he's going to have to be the one to, well, I guess not necessarily just on him, but either he, somebody in his family, or his inner circle is going to have to point him in the direction to get some help, whatever's necessary, go ahead and handle that. If he has to do, Calvin Ridley and take some time away to focus on it, go ahead and do that. But yeah, so Tampa Bay is now just going to be another chapter in the section of how did he screw that up in the ultimate book of Antonio Brown, I guess. So yeah, that's, like I said, that's my 2 cents again on Antonio Brown. But yes, like I said, for first week 18 in the NFL, first 17 game season, I'd have to say it was kind of a wild success. It's just putting a bow on the season real quick here. I think the playoffs this year are going to be exciting. I think there's going to be a hint of unpredictability with it. Like I said, later in the week when we go over the preview and all that, we'll see how I pick these matches, but I do think some of these matches will be difficult to pick, and I think that's good for the NFL. Also remember, this is going to be the first year with the new playoff schedule for wild card round. What they normally did was 3 games Saturday, 3 games Sunday. This year we're getting 2 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday, and now a Monday night wild card game. I'm excited to see how that looks. Once again, later in the week we'll go over the schedule for the playoffs, which games we played when, and really deep dive into all of that. But for the rest of this week up until then, we'll talk college football because the national championship happened Monday. Talk about that. Congratulations to Georgia. Talk about what I saw in the game, what really caught my eye, and where do we go from here with college football. Also, we'll talk some MLB this week because it's been about a month since the lockout, and there was a report over the weekend that I think Thursday the owners and players association are supposed to get to the bargaining table to do their preliminary talks or open up the dialogue, whatever you want to say. So we'll talk about that. And I guess then at that point, we'll be ready to get ready for the wild card round, the playoffs. I may sneak some basketball in. We'll see. We'll see. Trying to think of some other things I might do. But if I don't talk basketball, then I think it was a couple weeks ago I talked about trying to do some kind of fun topics with, Sports Weekly. So I might do one of those this week. I'm not sure which one yet, but I'll let you know. So once again, thanks for tuning in. Once again, this is an episode's a little bit longer than normal, at least with kind of the new format, with a new direction I'm going with it. So, only because it's been a few days since the last episode, I went a little bit longer on this one. But as I said before, I'm going to try to keep them 30, 35 minutes tops. So, definitely get back to that model the next episode. But thanks again for tuning in. If you're new here, your first time listening, hopefully you enjoyed it. You like the episode or subscribe, leave a review, whatever options are available to you. Do all that. And you can go back to some previous episodes, check those out. But appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully come back around again. And for those of you who've been here before, I obviously appreciate you as well. But as I always say, be safe out there. God bless, of course. And I'll catch you in the next episode. All right, I'm out.